Most people think the rich live under the same money rules as everyone else, just with bigger numbers. That is a fundamental misunderstanding of the financial reality. Wealth is not only about how much money enters your life, it is about the private rules that decide what money becomes after it arrives. Most people are taught how to earn, but they are never taught how to retain. They are taught how to upgrade their lifestyle, but not how to upgrade their security. The wealthy are not simply better at earning, they are better at positioning. They understand that money is a tool for design, not just for consumption. Two people can earn the exact same income for 10 years and end up in completely different universes. One person becomes more stable, more patient, and more difficult to shake. The other person stays busy, visible, and financially fragile. This divergence happens because of the rules they follow in private. The world only sees the result, but I want to show you the source code. Most people don't learn these rules until expensive mistakes have already done their damage. They wait for a crisis to realize their structure was weak. But a great architect tests the materials before the storm hits. We are going to break down the 5 money rules the rich follow quietly. These rules do not look glamorous in the moment. They do not create fast applause on social media. In fact, following them might make you look boring to the outside world. But over time, they separate real financial strength from financial performance. Performance is what you show. Strength is what you actually have. Before we get into the first rule, we need to clear up a dangerous myth. Most people think wealth is created through one dramatic event. They wait for a huge raise, a lucky investment, or a brilliant business idea. That story is emotionally satisfying, but it is a fairy tale. Real wealth is built through a quiet, consistent operating system. It comes from a handful of repeated decisions made in the dark. These decisions determine whether money stays in your life long enough to become power. If your decisions are weak, even a high income will disappear into a more expensive version of vulnerability. You will just be a person with a bigger house and bigger problems. If those decisions are strong, even a moderate income can become something durable. The tragedy for most people is that they are trained to signal progress. They are taught that a better life must look like a more expensive life. They convert their surplus into higher fixed costs and financed convenience. They buy emotional relief because their work makes them exhausted. From the outside, their life looks normal and successful, but under the surface, the structure is starting to crack. Real wealth is often invisible for much longer than people expect. It looks like the money that was not spent on a new car. It looks like a raise that did not immediately become a new identity. It looks like the ability to say no to a bad deal because you don't need the cash. The rich understand that the first job of money is not to impress others. The first job of money is to make your inner life harder to break. If you can see these rules clearly, you can stop mistaking motion for progress. You can stop confusing a louder life with a stronger one. The first rule is the foundation of everything else. Keep more than you display. Do not let your visible lifestyle grow faster than your invisible strength. Modern life rewards visible performance and quietly punishes modesty. If your income rises and your lifestyle stays the same, people will wonder what is wrong. They will think you are failing because you aren't upgrading. You might even start to wonder if your effort counts if it isn't visible. But the wealthy mind asks a different question. What can I leave untouched long enough to become real leverage? Retained money changes your options. Spent money only changes your scenery. A larger monthly payment can make life look upgraded while making you a slave to the clock. Real wealth is the restraint to keep your rocket light while you are building speed. It is the choice to buy stability instead of confirmation. Most people are buying confirmation that they have made it, but confirmation is expensive and it evaporates quickly. Stability is quiet and it compounds forever. Money that is constantly recruited to create appearances cannot protect you. In a culture designed to be seen, keeping money quiet is a psychological rebellion. It requires you to accept that your strongest moves will not look impressive to amateurs. But you aren't playing for the amateurs. You are playing for the long term. The more aggressively you display progress, the less quietly you retain power. The rich know that displayed money disappears, but retained capital creates freedom. They allow their strength to form in private before they ever show it to the world. They don't need the world to tell them they are winning. They can see it in their balance sheet. They can see it in their lack of stress. They can see it in their ability to wait for the right moment. If you violate this first rule, the other 4 won't save you. Your lifestyle will always act as a ceiling on your potential. But if you master this rule, you create the margin required for greatness. You create the space where innovation can actually happen. Now, Let's look at what the wealthy actually do with that margin. They move to rule number 2, buy assets, not relief. The second rule explains a massive amount of financial divergence. Most people do not lose ground through one dramatic error. They lose ground through repeated purchases that feel emotionally justified but economically weak. Think about how ordinary money stress actually works in your daily life. You work all week at a high intensity. By Friday, you are mentally worn down and exhausted. You feel under-rewarded, a little behind, and tired of being careful with every cent. Then the money arrives in your account. In that state of fatigue, what do you want most? Usually, you don't want leverage or long-term ownership. You don't want something that pays you back 5 years from now. You want relief. You want something immediate that softens the pressure of the week you just survived. So the extra money becomes convenience and temporary upgrades. It becomes subscriptions, better food, faster comfort, or an expensive weekend. It becomes a purchase that feels small enough to excuse in the moment. None of this is evil or inherently wrong. That is exactly what makes this rule so difficult to follow. Most people are not foolish. They are simply exhausted human beings. They are trying to buy a little breathing room inside a life that already feels tight. But economically, buying relief is very different from buying assets. Relief fades quickly. It gives you a temporary feeling, and then it disappears forever. Assets remain. A cash buffer remains. A useful skill remains. A tool that increases your earnings remains. Ownership in something productive remains. Money moved into a structure that can multiply it remains. The rich think in terms of what stays in the system. The average person is pushed into thinking in terms of what soothes the system. One mindset asks, what will this money become for me in 5 years? The other asks, what will make this week feel easier right now? If you repeat the second question often enough, your future gets sold off in small pieces. This is why some financial decisions feel harmless, but are actually expensive. One small act of relief is not the problem. The problem is when relief becomes the default destination for your surplus. Then every moment of stress recruits money away from assets and back into consumption. Over time, you aren't just spending cash. You are spending your freedom. You are spending the chance for that cash to ever harden into a structure. That is why so many financial lives never really move forward. Even when income improves, the new money is converted into better feelings. Then a year later, the person looks up and feels a deep sense of confusion. I make more than I used to, but I still do not feel secure, they say. Of course they don't. Money that keeps becoming relief never gets the chance to become power. The rich quietly follow the opposite rule. They allow part of their money to remain boring. They allow part of their life to stay uncomfortable for a while. They do not demand that every dollar make them feel better immediately. They leave some of it in forms that do not soothe the present. They do this so those dollars can strengthen the future. That is one of the deepest differences between average and wealthy behavior. The average person wants money to reduce emotional pressure today. The wealthy person is more willing to let money serve a longer mission. They know that financial freedom is not bought only by your income. It is bought by refusing to turn every surplus dollar into an anesthetic. Stop using your capital to numb the pain of your labor. Use your capital to end the necessity of your labor. That requires a high level of emotional design. You must build a life where you don't need to buy your happiness every Friday. Design a lifestyle that doesn't leave you so depleted that you lose your judgment. If you are always buying relief, you are in a leaky boat. No matter how fast you pump in new income, the boat stays heavy. Patch the leaks by choosing assets. Choose things that work while you sleep. Choose things that don't need a subscription to stay valuable. Choose things that grow in value without your constant attention. The more assets you own, the less relief you will eventually need, because a life built on assets is a life with naturally lower pressure. The rich don't need to buy a weekend escape because their Tuesday is already secure. They've traded temporary relief for permanent stability. That is the shift from a consumer mindset to a creator mindset. Stop asking what money can do for your mood. Start asking what money can do for your autonomy. The next rule is about making sure that autonomy can never be taken away. We must talk about the downside. Rule number 3. Protect the downside first. Rule number 3 is deeply rooted in the spirit of long-term survival. The rich understand something ordinary earners usually learn only through pain. Progress that can be erased easily is not real progress at all. If one layoff or one medical bill can wipe out months of discipline, your system is faulty. If one sharp rent increase can force you into a panic, your foundation is made of sand. You may be moving, but you are moving on a surface that keeps cracking under pressure, that is not compounding. That is a cycle of repeated recovery. Average people are usually trained to think upside first. They ask, how can I make more right now? They ask, what opportunity looks the most exciting today? They ask, how can I speed this whole process up? The wealthy spend far more energy protecting against ugly outcomes. They build buffers that the world never sees. They reduce unnecessary fragility in their personal lives. They avoid structures where one bad month can force a chain reaction of terrible decisions. This does not feel glamorous, which is why it is so often underestimated. For someone living close to the edge, downside protection sounds boring. It sounds less interesting than a side hustle, fantasy, or a high-return narrative. But if your structure cannot survive an interruption, every opportunity is a trap. Panic destroys your judgment. Desperation destroys your patience. Fear shortens your time horizons until you can only think about tomorrow morning. That is why the first meaningful pile of cash matters so much to your brain. It's not because it makes you look wealthy. It's because it creates absolute shock absorption. It lets you face reality without instantly falling into reactive debt. It changes the entire emotional texture of your decision-making. You stop making every choice with a loaded gun pointed at your month. Once fear drops, your patience begins to improve. Once patience improves, the quality of your decisions increases. Once decision quality improves, stronger opportunities become easier to hold. Protection is not the opposite of growth. It is the condition that makes sustainable growth possible in the first place. This is why the rich are often more conservative than people realize. They are not always being timid. They are preserving the engine. They know that one avoidable blow can set back your momentum by years. Protecting the downside is a way of protecting your future time. The first rule of compounding is simple. Never interrupt it unnecessarily. You do not have to win dramatically at the very beginning. You just have to avoid being broken repeatedly. Protecting the downside is not an act of fear. It is an act of structural intelligence. Most people learn this only after life has already charged them expensive tuition. They learn it after the car breaks down or the job disappears. But the rich try to learn the lesson before the impact happens. They build the safety glass before they drive the car. Think of your financial life as a high-performance operating system. You don't just want it to be fast. You want it to be crash-proof. A fast system that crashes every week is useless. A slightly slower system that stays up for a decade will eventually win the race. Check your vulnerabilities today. Where are you, one event away from a total system failure? Is it your debt? Is it your lack of liquid cash? Is it your dependence on a single, fragile source of income? Address the leak before you try to pour in more water. Clean up the bugs in your survival code. Once the floor is solid, you can build a skyscraper, but you cannot build a monument on a swamp. The wealthy build on rock, and they build with margins. They know that the world is unpredictable and full of errors. They design for those errors, so they don't have to fear them. This shift in focus from how much can I gain, to how much can I survive, is a mark of maturity. It is the difference between a gambler and an architect. One is looking for a hit, the other is looking for a structure. When you protect the downside, you buy the right to stay in the game. And staying in the game is how you eventually win it. Now that the structure is safe, we can look at the engine. We need to talk about the value of your effort. Rule number 4. Increase the value of each hour. The rich are not simply obsessed with working hard. They are obsessed with making each unit of effort worth more. Most ordinary people live inside a linear model of production. More hours means more income, and fewer hours means less income. A small raise helps, but only for a short time. Overtime helps, but it eventually destroys your energy and your health. Everything in that model depends on your continued physical presence. That structure can keep a life functioning, but it also creates a permanent ceiling. Your body, your time, and your attention are all finite resources. The wealthy ask a different question than the average earner. They ask, how can the same hour produce more value over time? They ask, how can one effort continue paying after the work is done? This is where the concept of leverage begins to change your life. Leverage can be ownership, pricing power, or a rare and specialized skill. It can be a reusable system, a platform, or a reputation. The form changes, but the principle of leverage remains the same. They do not want their entire future trapped in a time-for-money equation. They want each hour to become more valuable and less dependent on manual labor. They want to build a structure where effort continues to matter after the task is finished. This rule changes the way you must judge the work you do. A person can be extremely busy every day and still be financially trapped. Another person can appear to be doing less while increasing their long-term output. One is trapped in motion. The other is slowly changing the entire equation. This is why two hardworking people can end up in radically different places. One keeps adding more effort to the same low-value, linear structure. The other keeps increasing the value and the power of the structure itself. One becomes busier and more tired. The other becomes harder to replace. One gets paid mainly for their labor. The other gets paid for their judgment. In practice, this means making very ordinary but strategic decisions. It means learning a skill that has stronger pricing power in the market. It means moving toward work where your unique judgment matters more than your time. It means creating something that can be sold or utilized more than once. It means building ownership in something, even if it starts very small. These moves are not always dramatic in the beginning, but they change the value of your hour in ways that over time never can. Many people never notice they are climbing the wrong mountain. They are proud of how hard they work, but they aren't honest about the result. If every additional hour still has weak protection, your future will remain tight. The rich quietly follow a different rule of engagement. Before they chase more effort, they ask how to make the effort worth more. That single shift in perspective changes the entire trajectory of a life. Stop being a component in someone else's machine. Start designing the machine that produces the value. If you are only selling your time, you are selling your life in bulk. You should be selling your expertise, your systems, or your results. The market does not pay for your effort, it pays for the value created. The more your value is detached from your physical presence, the wealthier you become. This requires you to be a student of high-level skills. Don't just get better at the job. Get better at the things that control the job. Learn the source code of your industry. Understand the points of leverage where a small push creates a big move. High-income earners are often just high-level laborers. The wealthy are architects of value. You must decide which one you want to be. Architecture takes more thinking and less doing in the traditional sense. It requires you to step back and look at the whole system. Are you building a structure that gets stronger while you sleep, or are you just pushing a rock up a hill every morning? The rock will always be heavy. The system, however, can be optimized. Once you increase the value of your hour, you create a massive surplus, and what you do with that surplus is the final rule. It is the rule of invisible compounding. Rule number 5, stay quiet while you build. Rule number 5 is the quietest and most difficult rule of them all. It is psychologically taxing because modern culture trains you to seek visible proof. You are pushed to show momentum, confidence, and a better lifestyle almost immediately. The world demands to see the fruit before the tree has even taken deep root. The rich, the true architects, often do the exact opposite. They build quietly for long stretches, while almost nothing on the outside looks dramatic. This quietness is not a mystical secret. It is a practical design choice. Quiet builders do not need every move to be validated by the crowd. They do not need every small gain to become a social performance. They are more tolerant of boring repetition and delayed payoffs. They understand that some of the most important financial moves are invisible. Paying down a high-interest debt is not an exciting story for a dinner party. Building a 6-month cash reserve does not look impressive on a social feed. Buying broad, productive assets every month is deeply unglamorous work. Learning a difficult skill for 2 years before it changes your pay is lonely. Refusing lifestyle inflation when everyone around you is leveling up is hard. But these are exactly the moves that become enormous and undeniable later. Quiet progress feels emotionally expensive in the beginning. You are doing the right thing, but the right thing isn't giving you an identity yet. You are becoming stronger, but you cannot show it off to get an instant reward. To the outside world, it may look like nothing much is happening in your life. Internally, however, the entire architecture of your future is changing. Most people abandon strong strategies because they don't produce a rush fast enough. The progress feels too slow, too plain, and too invisible to be real. So they switch plans, chase new trends, or buy status to feel successful. They demand proof of their effort before the math has had time to work its magic. The rich are quieter because they have accepted the emotional shape of compounding. Compounding is boring and flat for a long time before it becomes vertical. It is a J-curve that requires you to survive the flat part without quitting. Wealth is often lost in the desperate need to feel successful too early. If you need the world to confirm you are winning, you will always be tempted to spend. You will signal your progress and abandon your process before it matures. Quiet builders resist that urge with everything they have. They let their strength form in private, away from the noise of expectations. They understand that the most decisive seasons of life are the ones that look ordinary. They are transformative on the inside, while appearing stagnant on the outside. Why do most people learn these rules too late in the game? Because modern life teaches you almost the exact opposite of the truth. It teaches you to look successful long before you are actually secure. It teaches you to expand your lifestyle faster than your profit margin. It teaches you to spend a raise before you even know how to protect it. It teaches you to value comparison over the strength of your own structure. By the time people see these rules clearly, they are carrying heavy baggage. Their fixed costs are already too high to take a real risk. Their buffer is too small to survive a change in the market. Their habits are organized around emotional relief instead of structural power. Their time has been sold for years inside a system that provides zero leverage. The lesson eventually arrives, but it arrives after the damage is done. That is why these rules feel like a secret kept by the wealthy. But they were never hidden. They were just drowned out by louder, cheaper messages. The world screams at you to consume now and display now. It screams at you to upgrade now and reward yourself now. When those messages are repeated for years, quiet wealth feels like a myth. The point of this video is not to make you feel regret for the past. The point is to shorten the delay between your current state and your future power. Even if you learned these rules late, starting now is cheaper than starting later. Every year you wait is a year of momentum you can never buy back. The earlier you move from performance to structure, the more of your life you recover. The moment you stop using money for an image, it starts working for your freedom. Most people do not need a financial miracle or a lucky break. They just need to stop learning the right lessons so late in life. The rich keep more than they display. They buy assets instead of temporary relief. They protect the downside before they ever chase the upside. They increase the value of each hour, rather than just increasing their effort. And they stay quiet while the foundation is being poured. None of these rules sounds like a headline on a magazine. They sound restrained, repetitive, and unexciting to the average ear. But that is exactly what real strength looks like in its early stages. It is quiet, consistent, and easy for the world to underestimate. The rich follow these rules not because they are different, but because their script is better. That script changes what money becomes inside your life. It turns pressure into margin and noise into stability. If you take one thing from this, let it be the shift from performance to architecture. Stop trying to look like you've made it. Start building a structure that ensures you actually have. That is when the future stops being a decoration and starts being a fortress. And once that shift happens, everything else follows. Stay hungry for the truth. Stay foolish enough to build in the dark. Build something that lasts.